We should get inside.
In Crescent City, California in 1946, Maya Rutledge, a young girl, manages to convince her parents to let her play outside during a picnic despite the rain. While exploring, she sees lovely flowers, and as she picks them, a strange light suddenly takes her away. In 1951, in South Korea, an African-American U.S. Army soldier named Richard Tyler faced harassment for impregnating a white woman. After his fellow soldiers depart, leaving him alone and huddled on the floor, a strange light materializes above Richard's tent, promptly spiriting him away. Meanwhile, in Tacoma, Washington in 1979, affluent Orson Bailey ends his workday early on his 35th work anniversary, only to be abruptly taken by a dazzling light as he gets into his car. Similarly, in 2001, young Sean, chatting and drinking with his cousin Kyle during a camping trip, is engulfed by a bright light overhead, vanishing while Kyle is left unconscious from the event's shock. In 2004, Tom Baldwin, a former FBI agent, tended to his comatose son, Kyle, still affected by the enigmatic events of 2001. Tom, consumed by his son's state, neglects his work as he seeks answers, suspecting his missing nephew Sean's involvement. As Tom tunes into news of a comet sighting, his wife Linda, seeking a fresh start after a challenging 3 years, joins him. In another location, Agent Diana Scoris from the Department of Homeland Security in Seattle is urgently summoned to duty. Her superior, Dennis Ryland, alerts her that a massive comet is hurtling towards Earth at an alarming speed. Despite numerous missile attempts to intercept it, the comet remains unaffected, leading Diana to question its true nature. As people brace for impact and bid farewell to their loved ones, the comet unexpectedly decelerates. Diana predicts that the object will likely touch down near Mount Rainier, near their base, as it enters the atmosphere, defying expectations. Shortly after, a multitude of individuals, including emergency responders, reporters, law enforcement, and FBI personnel, converge near a lake at the base of Mount Rainier to observe the comet's descent. However, to everyone's surprise, the plummeting object transforms into a radiant mass of light instead of a typical comet. This mass halts just above the ground and suddenly explodes, sending bystanders flying. As the haze dissipates, a diverse crowd emerges, comprising men, women, and children of various backgrounds and ages. Nia Rutledge, Orson Bailey, and Sean are among those who have reappeared, seemingly unchanged since the day they vanished. Meanwhile, Tom spots his nephew Sean on TV and rushes to convince his boss, Dennis Ryland, to let him rejoin the investigation. Initially hesitant due to Tom's personal connection, Dennis eventually relents. Tom partners with Diana to gather and probe the 4,400 individuals who have inexplicably reappeared near Mount Rainier. As the returnees are held in quarantine, tensions rise. Tom confronts Sean about Kyle's condition, insinuating that he holds information. Sean reacts angrily and storms out during the interrogation. Meanwhile, Richard converses briefly with another returnee, Lily Moore. He reveals his disappearance in 1951 and suggests Lily resembles an old acquaintance of his. They soon realize that Lily's grandmother shared the same name as Richard's former friend. Back in 1951, Richard and Lily were in a relationship, facing discrimination for their interracial romance. Following initial interviews and health assessments, the returnees are freed due to legal constraints. Most depart, except for 130 individuals, such as Maya, who believes her parents have passed away and lacks a place to go. Afterward, Lily sets out to find her family, who failed to arrive at the meeting point. Filled with anticipation, she heads back to her home, where she encounters her daughter, Heidi. To her dismay, Heidi does not recognize her. Moments later, her husband, Brian, answers the door and informs her that he has remarried, making it clear that she is no longer welcome in their home. In a similar vein, Richard returns to his former neighborhood in St. Louis, only to find it has deteriorated into a place overrun by homelessness. Meanwhile, Tom takes Diana to a party thrown for Sean. Later, Tom steps outside to speak with Sean, attempting to express his regret and sharing that he is pleased to see the young man back. As they continue their conversation, a bird suddenly crashes into a window and falls dead nearby. Sean, unfazed, picks picks up the bird while still chatting with his uncle. Remarkably, within just a few seconds, the bird revives and takes off into the sky, leaving Tom in a state of confusion. On the same day, Maya is taken in by her new foster family. Before leaving, she says goodbye to Diana, but cryptically hints that they will see each other again soon, which surprises the social worker present. Meanwhile, after visiting his wife at a nursing home, Orson decides to return to his old workplace with the hope of reclaiming his former job. Orson discovers that his former partner's son, Adam Kensington, is now in charge of the company. Adam informs Orson that his shares in the firm have been bought out and, unfortunately, there are no job openings available at the moment. He expresses that he cannot offer Orson a position. Meanwhile, at her new foster parents' home, Maya gets settled into her room and places her shoes on a chair. She explains that she doesn't want her shoes to get wet later, which leaves the couple puzzled, as they are unsure what the young girl is referring to. Richard finds himself at a cafe, having nowhere else to go and no family to turn to. Sean faces intimidation when he discovers threatening graffiti painted on his car. Meanwhile, at the foster parents' home, a pipe connected to the washing machine bursts, causing water to overflow, just as little Maya had foreseen. The water quickly spreads throughout the house, but Maya's shoes remain dry because she had thoughtfully placed them on a chair. Later, Orson makes his way to the home of his former business partner, where Adam now resides. Although Adam is fully aware of the difficult situation Orson is facing, he chooses not to answer the door. Frustrated, Orson begins to shake the gate angrily, and the force of his actions causes the entire house to tremble. Moments later, the windows explode outward with a loud crash. In a fit of rage, Orson screams, and the intensity of his outburst leads to a tragic accident. As a result of the incident, Orson is taken into custody under suspicion of Adam's murder. However, the police quickly realize they lack sufficient evidence to hold him, as footage from the security cameras clearly shows that he never entered the house. Consequently, they are compelled to release him. Meanwhile, Lily goes to the doctor because of persistent nausea and receives startling news: she is pregnant. This revelation leaves her in shock, especially since her husband had been gone for 11 months before her disappearance, and she had not been with anyone else during that time. When she finally meets up with her husband to share the news about the pregnancy, he dismisses her concerns without any sign of support or understanding. Additionally, he prevents his ex-wife from seeing their daughter, Heidi, and presents her with a restraining order, sternly warning her not to approach him or his family. At school, Sean endures constant bullying from another student, Andrew, who taunts him for being the weird person who returned after going missing. Frustrated by the relentless harassment, Sean finally retaliates, and the two engage in a physical altercation. Initially, Andrew has the upper hand, but Sean soon gains the advantage, managing to pin Andrew's head to the ground. In a shocking turn of events, Sean notices that Andrew's face becomes pale as if all color is draining from it. Sean releases Andrew, but the other students watching the fight are left unnerved by what they witnessed. In another place, Maya's foster father persuades his wife to return the young girl to the holding center due to her unsettling ability to predict the future. Before dropping Maya off, the foster mother advises her to be cautious about revealing her predictions to avoid alarming others. Days later, Richard locates Lily observing her daughter Heidi in a park. Reunited, Lily embraces Richard, and they head to a cafe together. At the cafe, Lily confides in Richard about her upcoming baby and her lack of a place to stay. In turn, Richard reveals his past relationship with Lily's grandmother and offers to help her find accommodation. Meanwhile, Tom and Diana locate Orson at an old farmhouse where he's seeking refuge. Orson, frightened, pleads for solitude but inadvertently triggers a powerful tremor in his distress. The house begins to collapse as Orson, unable to control the situation, despairs. As Tom, now experiencing a headache, confronts Orson with a gun, he collapses from a nosebleed before he can act. In a panic, Diana shoots Orson in the shoulder, temporarily restoring order. They rush Orson to the hospital where their superior Dennis directs them to explore the returnee's abilities to prevent further calamities. That evening, Sean visits his cousin Kyle in the hospital, unnerved by recent events involving a dead bird and a classmate. Tentatively, he places his hand on Kyle's chest, triggering signs of improvement. Startled, Sean withdraws his hand and rushes home to escape the situation. The focus then shifts to Carl Morrissey, a returnee who vanished in 2003 and reappeared 18 months later. After finishing work, Carl reunites with his wife, Grace. While heading home, Carl suggests a shortcut through Bradley Park, but Grace warns him of its current violent, unsafe state, overrun by criminals. Meanwhile, at Homeland Security headquarters, Dennis Ryland updates Tom and Diana about Maya's suspected future-seeing talents. This belief stems from conversations with Maya's foster parents and a cafeteria worker who had encountered the child. Perplexed, the agents question why Maya, held for 6 decades, would return with precognitive abilities. Richard and Lily secure an apartment lease following a brief discussion. Richard expresses concerns about potential discrimination due to his race, but Lily assures him of societal progress. While inspecting the apartment, Lily suddenly feels disoriented and unwell, attributing it to the baby. She informs Richard of her discomfort and the need to depart. Meanwhile, a few days later, Carl returns from a quick grocery run, but disregards his wife's caution about the park. In the park, he falls victim to a mugging by 2 assailants. Initially, the returnee hands over his money, but when the muggers demand more, the situation intensifies. One of them attempts to strike Carl, who surprises them by swiftly retaliating. Excitedly, Carl recounts the incident to Grace, convinced he has acquired powers for a purpose. The following day, Tom and Linda receive a hospital summons, where a doctor reports an anomaly in Kyle's brain activity. He notes a sudden surge in brain activity observed the previous Thursday. Afterward, Tom checks the hospital records to investigate visitors to Kyle on the previous Thursday. The nurse reveals that Sean visited late that night. Tom then visits Sean's school to discuss the incident. Despite Sean's confession of seeing Kyle, he vehemently denies any involvement. Tom mentions the bird revival incident, but Sean leaves in frustration. Later, Diana and Tom meet with scientist Marco at Homeland Security headquarters. Marco reveals that gravity has slightly altered at the locations of the 4,400 disappearances, prompting them to ponder alien abduction. Meanwhile, at their new residence, Lily shares with Richard her ability to understand her baby's thoughts and reactions. That night, when his wife is sleeping, Carl heads to Bradley Park to clean and repaint benches and statues marred by graffiti. Suddenly, he rushes to a woman's aid upon hearing her scream as 3 men attempt to harm her. Despite Carl's intervention, the men attack him. Undeterred, Carl fights back while the woman watches in astonishment. Early the next morning, Diana and Tom visit the woman at her workplace. She recounts the incident, mentioning how one man took on all 3 attackers. The agents acknowledge such feats but are intrigued by the man's exceptional agility. She recalls the man smelling like old fish. Meanwhile, Lily discreetly observes Heidi doing her homework through a window at Brian's residence. Unexpectedly, Lily's baby reacts with discomfort, reminiscent of the incident in the apartment, leading her to accidentally topple a plant. Startled by the commotion, Brian glimpses his ex-wife. Subsequently, Lily gets arrested and contacts Richard from the police station. Later, Richard intercepts Brian as he leaves for work, offering assurances that if charges are dropped, Lily will not intrude on him or Heidi. Although initially hesitant, Brian eventually agrees to Richard's proposition. Following her release, Lily reunites with Richard, sharing her observation of Heidi appearing content despite her absence. Lily pledges to keep her distance, suspecting the baby's aversion to Heidi. Meanwhile, Sean is tinkering with his car when Nikki enters. She quickly confronts him, asking why he has been behaving so differently towards her lately. When he avoids her questions, she moves closer to his car and inadvertently touches the hot engine, resulting in a burn on her hand. Startled, Sean instinctively rubs her hand, and within moments, the burn miraculously heals. In that instant, Nikki realizes he possesses healing abilities, and they share a kiss. Meanwhile, at the Homeland Security office, Tom is signing the divorce papers that his wife has sent him. Since their son was placed in a coma, Tom has become consumed by his trauma and work, which has left their relationship feeling distant and cold. Not long after, Diana arrives and begins to explain how she has narrowed down the list of potential vigilantes linked to Bradley Park. After a brief overview of her findings, she identifies 13 individuals who meet her criteria. Among these, she can highlight Carl Morrissey, who works in the seafood department of a supermarket situated near the park. That evening, Carl strolls through the park and catches a man vandalizing a freshly cleaned wall. An altercation ensues when Carl confronts the vandal. Meanwhile, Tom and Diana reach the Morrissey residence. Diana inquires with Grace about the Bradley Park vigilante, to which Grace feigns ignorance initially. However, after Tom probes about her husband, she relents and leads the agents to the park. There, they discover Carl seated on a bench bearing a significant knife wound in his abdomen. Acting swiftly, Tom requests an ambulance, but Carl's injuries prove fatal as he slowly succumbs in his wife's embrace. In his final moments, moments, Carl confides in Grace, admitting his misconception about being sent back to restore the neighborhood. The following morning, as the police start clearing the area, locals from Carl's community step in, initiating the park's cleanup. Meanwhile, at the headquarters, Diana finalizes the temporary guardianship paperwork for Maya. Upon entering the room, she finds Maya ready with her suitcase, already aware of the news before being informed. In another part of the hospital, Tom hurriedly makes his way through the corridor and enters Kyle's room. There, he finds Linda sitting beside an empty bed, crying intensely. The doctors have taken Kyle for surgery to alleviate the excess fluid in his skull. Distressed, Linda informs Tom that there is a significant risk that Kyle could experience permanent brain damage as a consequence of his condition. A few days later, Diana relaxes at home, tuning into the popular morning TV show The Barbara Yates Show, featuring Jordan Collier, a 4400 returnee. Collier aims to humanize the 4400 and challenge negative portrayals like those from Barbara, labeling them as dangerous. During breakfast, Diana reads a newspaper article revealing the resurgence of the infamous Friday Harbor killer after 21 years. This individual had killed 8 women before abruptly halting their crimes. Recently, a 9th victim, Teresa Barron, was found dead near the woods in Friday Harbor. Homeland Security discusses Barron's murder, noting Oliver Knox, a returning 4400 missing for 21 years, reappeared around the same time as Teresa's death. Following this, Diana and Tom meet with Sheriff Conrad from Friday Harbor to explore whether Knox could be linked to the crime. Later, they confront Knox directly and question him about Teresa Barron's murder. During the interrogation, Knox argues that he could not possibly have known the victim, as she was born after his abduction, meaning he only learned about her existence through the news. With his polite demeanor and quick speech, Knox can convince them of his innocence, at least for the moment. And then, Sean visits the lakeside at Mount Rainier, a location where he and the others had returned. At the lakeside, Sean encounters several other returnees who regularly gather to converse and share their experiences. Suddenly, Jordan Collier appears and expresses his desire to organize the 4400, as tensions are beginning to rise within the community, leading to protests against them. He invites the assembled returnees to meet at his place on Thursday for further discussions. The next morning, Tom and Diana join the sheriff as they venture into the woods. Although the sheriff insists that the local police had already thoroughly searched the area and found nothing, Diana is determined to investigate further. Her persistence pays off when she discovers a fingerprint on a leaf, providing the agents with a crucial lead. The fingerprint belongs to Philip Lopez. When the agents arrive at Philip Lopez's home, they discover his lifeless body hanging from the stairwell. Alongside him, they find a suicide note in which he confesses not only to the murder of Teresa Barron, but also to the killings of 9 other women. The following day, Knox is seen behaving suspiciously as he takes pictures of a bartender before striking up a conversation with a stranger named Charlie Staley. He shows Charlie the photo he took earlier and expresses his desire to say something about the woman in the image. That evening, as the woman in the photograph closes her store and heads home, Charlie follows her, whistling nonchalantly as he goes. The following morning, Charlie walks down the street, his white shirt stained with blood, while he hears Knox's voice echoing in his mind. Disturbed and in a state of confusion, he suddenly runs into the street, directly into the path of an approaching trailer. Fortunately, the truck driver manages to slam on the brakes just in time to avoid hitting Charlie, who is subsequently taken into custody. Later, Tom and Diana observe from behind a two-way mirror as Charlie confesses to murdering the video shop girl along with the other 9 victims. However, they realize that Charlie was only 5 years old when the first murder took place, which means he could not possibly be the Friday Harbor killer. Additionally, they note that Philip Lopez was left-handed, while the actual Friday Harbor killer was right-handed, further ruling him out as the notorious serial killer. The next day at Jordan Collier's residence, members of the 4400 gather. Sean discusses his abilities with Collier, who, preoccupied with upcoming interviews, interrupts the conversation. Collier then leaves Sean and encounters Lily in the garden. During their discussion, Lily feels dizzy and sits down, receiving water from Richard. She reveals to Collier that she returned pregnant, despite not being so during her abduction. Collier advises against disclosing this to their government-appointed counselor. Impressed, Collier offers Richard a position in the security department of the 4400 Foundation, which he accepts. Tom and Diana go back to Friday Harbor after receiving a letter from the killer with exclusive details. Lacking concrete evidence against Knox, they couldn't apprehend him. Knox visits a garage, showing a photo of Felicia to Aaron Mitchell, an employee there. In a flashback, Sean remembers the night he returned, seeing bright tentacles around Kyle as he screamed. Sean steps in and is taken instead. The next morning, Felicia encounters Mitchell in the woods, seeking help finding his dog. She tries to avoid him, but he stops her. When she screams, Mitchell pulls out a knife. Tom and Sheriff Connor arrive, guns drawn. Mitchell stays silent during questioning, especially when shown a photo with him and Knox. Tom and Diana leave to pursue their investigation. At Knox's home, they find a chilling message in blood on the wall. Felicia must die. Back at Felicia's house, Knox confronts her. She defends herself by hitting him with a vase as police cars appear. Knox threatens her with a knife, but Tom, Diana, and Connor intervene, demanding he drop the weapon and release Felicia. Tom and Diana brief Marco in the theory room about their findings. They express concerns about the 4400's origins, suspecting that the force behind their return may not have good intentions, especially seen through Knox's newfound abilities. Marco delves into the repercussions of past events, connecting Bailey's choices to Kensington's downfall and Carl's demise, encouraging community involvement. Tom visits the hospital and encounters Sean and Kyle. After Sean steps aside, Kyle, now awake and sitting up, asks Tom a chilling question about his time in darkness. Dr. Mayhew permits Kyle to go home, advising patient as he readjusts. They bring Kyle to Linda's house where he expresses unfamiliarity with his surroundings, prompting Tom to move back in. Tom decides to visit Sean to express his gratitude. Sean reveals that he simply laid his hands on Kyle, prompting Kyle to awaken, and he declines NTAC's request to study his abilities. Meanwhile, Richard and Lily return home after a movie. As they near their apartment, Richard unlocks the door, triggering Lily's baby's distress. Richard shields Lily as their apartment explodes. Diana and Tom arrive at the site, collect bomb fragments for evidence, and then head back to NTAC headquarters. There, they brief Dennis on their discoveries, highlighting the bomb's simplicity. Later, Richard, Lily, and Collier tour Collier's new residential complex. Collier offers Richard and Lily a house, which they gladly accept. At Homeland Security, Tom and Diana discuss the ripple effect. Gail Keating's brothers, Dean and Glenn, work on constructing a bomb at their home. Leaving work, Barbara Yates is accosted by a man who directs her attention to a limo across the street. Inside, Rylan Hanser hands her a manila envelope detailing a hit-and-run involving a TV host. He warns of impending charges, bidding her farewell. Diana picks up Maya from school, discovering Maya cannot return due to potential risks. Maya comforts Diana, assuring her that things will improve. Mary Deneville, a 4400, tends to a wilting sunflower, revitalizing it before her van explodes upon ignition. Meanwhile, at the high school, Nikki informs Sean of her breakup with Danny. Sean mentions seeing it before, and she clarifies she wasn't involved. Feeling the need to escape, she accepts Sean's offer to visit a secluded spot. At NTAC, Lily talks with Diana and Tom about conflicts of interest. Defending their stances, they discuss imminent risks that require adaptation. Lily addresses Collier about control and expenses, assured he won't interfere with her and Richard. Diana traces bomb materials to William Wayne Construction over the phone with Tom. Sean takes Nikki to MT Rainier, showing where the 4400 returned. They bond over their experiences, sharing a personal moment. Diana informs Tom of tracing the Keating brothers' blasting cap and briefs Ryland on their suspicions of revenge. They issue an APB for the brothers' truck. Tom alerts Richard, and Diana spots Dean's truck heading to Sean's. They rush to the roof, board a helicopter, land in front of the truck, and discover the driver wasn't at work that day. Back at NTAC HQ, they notice a van near Collier's complex. Richard spots the van and Lily's baby, sensing danger. Tom and Diana rush in via helicopter, hovering over Richard's place. Tom targets the van, while Richard and the guards aim shotguns at the Keating brothers preparing a bomb. Tom hits one brother, but they detonate the bomb and escape in the van towards the gate. Richard shoots a tire, causing it to tip over and explode harmlessly. Tom and Diana apprehend the Keatings. Lily heads to the hospital to consult Dr. Mayhew about Kyle. At home, Linda urgently calls Tom outside. They discover Kyle naked in the yard, claiming he's not who he seems. The season finale begins with Kyle rejecting his name. Dr. Mayhew informs Tom about Kyle's dissociative disorder. Lily arrives to take Kyle into government custody. Kyle whispers to his mother, revealing he knows where he must go and to tell Tom he has figured it out. At Homeland Security, Ryland expresses frustration over Kyle being in government custody, as Lily identifies him as a key witness to an abduction. Tom bursts in, pushing Lily against a wall and demanding Kyle's whereabouts at gunpoint. Ryland intervenes, urging Tom to holster his gun and promising to retrieve Kyle. Meanwhile, Lily visits Dr. Kern for a prenatal checkup, where the doctor suggests an amino synthesis due to concerns about a potential genetic disease in her baby. Richard overhears the secretary discussing Lily with Dr. Kern at Collier's office. Confronting Kern about informing Collier of Lily's visits, Richard learns that Lily's baby has sickle cell anemia. They question why Collier kept this from Lily. Tom, Marco, and Diana locate Kyle, planning to act when the night shift arrives. Linda tails Tom to a safe house, ensuring they're not followed. They arrange to rendezvous there to retrieve Kyle, sharing a kiss. Diana picks Maya up from daycare and witnesses Lily speaking with her. Diana warns him to stay away, but Lily assures Maya they'll meet again. Richard asks Collier for space, despite appreciating his assistance. Tom visits Diana, reassured by Maya that they will locate Kyle, who she believes holds the key to their situation. Diana incapacitates a guard at the quarantine center, and with Kyle, they head to Highland Beach where he insists on going. Tom informs Linda of Kyle's retrieval. While en route, Kyle takes control of the vehicle, aiming for the beach where Sean vanished. Jordan presents Lily with a 1945 headline on a racial assault trial. Sharing it with Richard, he recounts a past arrest post, a flirtation incident. Lily discerns Collier's manipulations, prompting a decision to depart. At Sean's home, a conflict arises when Danny discovers Nikki's feelings for Sean, leading to a confrontation. Sean unintentionally drains Danny's energy, prompting his mother to expel him. Attempting to flee, Lily and Richard encounter Collier and an associate. Richard brandishes a gun, warning Collier to keep away from Lily. Collier's touch on Lily's stomach triggers a defensive reaction from the baby, causing him pain. They manage to escape as Collier issues threats of pursuit. At Highland Beach, Kyle insists to Tom that he belongs there, while Sean shows up at Collier's place. Collier permits Sean to stay, inquiring about his abilities. Ryland and Lily reach the beach, where Tom urges Kyle to depart. Suddenly, Kyle emits a blue light from his chest, revealing he's not truly Kyle, but a being influenced by Sean. The entity discloses its origin as a human from a future where the 4400 were taken to avert humanity's demise. Desperation grows among Lily and the group. Diana's touch provokes a reaction, leading Lily to shoot at the being, hitting Kyle, causing the light to fade. Kyle appears lifeless, but revives moments later, recognizing his true self. 6 months later, Lily and Richard reside in a cabin. Sensing it's time for the baby's arrival, Lily signals to Richard, who prepares the car. In the final scene, as they drive, nature seems to pay homage, with trees aligning and bowing before them.